The 10th process of the Align, Plan and Organize domain, called Manage Suppliers, has 5 practices. The first practice is to evaluate supplier relationships and contracts. From a RACI charts perspective, the entity that is responsible is the head of IT administration, and the entity that is held accountable is the Chief Information Officer. The practice receives one input, which is the supplier contracts from external sources. It generates 3 outputs, which are the supplier catalog to be used by the BAI2 process, and the supplier evaluation criteria and the potential revisions to supplier contracts to be used internally. The activities involved in this practice include establishing the supplier evaluation criteria, allowing to compare and select the adequate suppliers. The existing suppliers should be identified and categorized, and a detailed register should be maintained of the preferred suppliers. The performance of the existing suppliers should be regularly evaluated, and opportunities for improvement should be identified. The second practice is to select the suppliers. The entity that is responsible for this practice is the head of IT administration, and the entity that is held accountable is the Chief Information Officer. The practice receives one input, which is the acquisition and development plan from the BAI2 process. The practice generates 3 outputs, which are the request for information and request for proposals to be used by the BAI2 process, the results of supplier evaluations to be used by the EDM4 and BAI2 processes, and the RFI and RFP documents to be used by the BAI2 process. The activities involved in this practice include reviewing the request for information and request for proposals, to ensure that the requirements and the decision process are clearly defined. The RFI and RFP documents should be evaluated in regards to the established criteria, along with verifying the references provided by the suppliers. The supplier that can best fit the RFP should be selected, the contract should be signed, and this process should be documented. The rights and obligations of all parties should be specified in the contracts, such as the licensing of intellectual property, the service levels, maintenance, warranties, performance criteria, payment methods, and compliance with the organization's policies. Finally, legal advice should be sought when signing the contract.